The dose reconstruction that was done by the government did not take into account the simple fact that you could get from talking to Tina. People collected water on their roofs in barrels. If there were fallout on the roof, it would wash into the barrels. The bottom of the barrels would collect radioactivity. And even after the radioactivity was washed off, you would have radioactive water. I don't know what happened to those barrels. They're probably in some landfill somewhere, or those roofs. And the sheets outside in which babies slept that were radioactive. All of these issues I've tried to call attention of the nuclear establishment. We wrote a long letter in 1999 saying pay attention, signed by 100 physicians, scientists, and activists, and community leaders around the world. No, we'll do it later was the response, officially in print. And 24 years later, I wrote, 23 years in 2022, I wrote the same letter practically to the National Academy saying, where is it? Here's all the evidence. Why haven't you done it yet? I haven't received an answer. But I think a technical voice is not powerful. I think what Tina has done in her community in Washington and worldwide in solidarity with all the people who have suffered, I know my friend Dan is going to be honored. I miss him so much. He was one of the reviewers of my 1985 work, actually. Our work goes back more than 4 decades. But I can't think of anybody on the matter of radioactivity and nuclear weapon dangers who deserves this honor more than Tina, who has called attention to some of the most neglected aspects of the nuclear age. Thank you, Tina.
When you start out doing this work, you don't expect evenings like this. First of all, Arjun mentioned a 1985 piece that he wrote. It was featured in the local newspaper, an op-ed. I read that, and it affirmed what I always knew. It affirmed what I had seen going on in my community. It affirmed what I had been talking about, but what no one had been listening to. And it gave me the courage, actually, and the conviction to move forward as an activist to do this work. And so I owe a great deal of what I have done and achieved to the writings of Arjun. And Arjun and I spoke about this briefly today. And he said, why had no one ever brought up Stafford Warren's memo that was declassified way before Arjun read it? And I said, and why hadn't anyone ever made a big deal about it? And I said, Arjun, because nobody saw us 78 years ago. Nobody saw us before you read that memo, and no one ever had the guts or the courage to bring it forward the way that Arjun did. And why? Because Arjun has always seen these injustices and made them into issues and recognized what they are. I want to say my father's name out loud. I always say that we've heard Oppenheimer's name over and over. I would have put my father up against Oppenheimer in every measure except nuclear physics. And if my father had had an opportunity to go to college, he may have been a nuclear physicist, who knows. But my grandfather was killed in Germany. My father's father, he's buried in Belgium. And my grandmother raised 5 children alone. But it was my father and my mother who taught me about courage, about standing up when I know that things aren't right. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I'm a trained scientist. I did biological research. I have a master's degree in biology. I had an NIH grant to work on the toxic effects of aluminum on rainbow trout because of the smokestacks in the Four Corners area and the fact that we were losing the trout in the waterways in that region. I also went to medical school and studied medicine for 2 years. I fully intended to be a physician and go back to Tularosa, my little village, and set broken arms and deliver babies, but I had a big change in life. I went through a divorce and I was a single mom, and I had to figure out a way to support myself and my son. And people underestimate me all the time because I look like this. I'm a brown woman, right? So people underestimate me all the time, but I will tell you all that the conviction that I learned in my community, where people die on a regular basis, where we attend to each other even when we're sick ourselves, where 2-year-old children are having their eyes removed to eye cancer, where 11-month-old babies are going to Houston for chemotherapy, and we're holding bake sales and enchilada suppers, and we have garage sales so that we can, as a community, raise enough money to make sure that these families have what we want. I see that as a huge injustice in a nation like this. We had our lives and our lands invaded. They didn't have the decency to warn us before or afterwards, and we've been dying ever since. I'm the 4th generation in my family to have cancer since 1945, and now I have a 23-year-old niece that was diagnosed with thyroid cancer like I was, and she's had her life upended. And we now know in my family who's next, because we don't ask if we're going to get cancer, we ask when. And that is what the US government left behind for us. That is the legacy of what we live with. And I heard you say today that you do this because you have children. I have a son and a grandson, and they bear those genetics. And that's why I do this work also. Because I can't stand or bear the thought that someday I will see one of my precious grandsons have to go through what my niece is going through right now. I can't thank you all enough for what you do by raising up our voices, by seeing us in a way that the Oppenheimer movie didn't have the guts to portray. If you watch the movie, it's as if it took place in this vacuum. They don't show how they stole the land from the people of New Mexico, chased them off, slaughtered their animals, burned their crops, and sent them away $7 an acre, never to reestablish a livelihood. They had to go to work at the labs. We're the people that built the roads and the bridges and the facilities and then cleaned them. We're the men that lost our lives in explosive accidents. We're the women that were bussed up there and cooked every meal, cleaned every house, changed every diaper, fed every baby bottle. But they don't portray that. They came to New Mexico to film that movie, and they invaded our lands and our lives the same way that they did when they established the Manhattan Project. They took our tax incentives. I've mentioned it today. 47% of all the people in New Mexico rely on Medicaid for health care, the highest in the nation. Why? Because we're a sick population. We were the uranium miners. That they used our poverty against us. They promised us a better life, and they sent us into the uranium mines without proper protection. And now we're dying. My good friend Phil Harrison, who has won this award, called me today. He said, please tell them, Tina, on the Navajo Nation, we're dying every day. We're a sick population. 2 million people in New Mexico carrying $881 million, almost $1 billion in medical debt. And our government says to us all the time, it's going to cost too much to take care of you. Imagine that. New Mexicans were true patriots. During World War II, we've given everything to this. During World War II, we had more people enlisted, more people died per capita of any state in the nation. We bought more war bonds than any other state. We've given everything we have to this. So thank you for recognizing our sacrifices. We are right now on the cusp of them passing the RICA amendments. It's in consideration right now in the US Congress. Senator McConnell isn't sure it's worth it. He's telling us it's going to cost too much. Contact his office tomorrow. Let them know this is vitally important to you. Call Speaker Johnson. We have amazing bipartisan support for this right now. We have Senator Hawley from Missouri going out there publicly saying, either pass this or I will hold up the NDAA. We have Jim Jordan clearing the way in the House for this. It's the right thing to do. And so again, I want to thank everybody that came together to put this wonderful event together for us tonight. I want to thank everybody that considers the work that we do day in and day out as volunteers worthy of this kind of an honor. And I want to just say to my brothers and sisters from across the world who look just like me, you could be my daughter, who look just like me, we have to stand together as one voice. We have to make sure people know all over the place that we were marginalized, that they robbed us of our pursuit of peace and tranquility and a life free of this burden. Thank you so much.
Thank you.